Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got 6 games here on Monday night to choose from. A couple of Eastern Conference matchups that we're bringing you in our game videos today. This one, we're talking about Philly in Indy taking on the Pacers. Pretty big spread there for the Pacers. We'll get into that one. We got another Eastern Conference matchup, like I said, with those Hawks and Heat. And we've got player props up for you today, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. You can check out everything we're bringing you for the rest of this season and into the postseason as well. Also want you to head to thelines.com. You can check out all of the great written content we have up there right now with the NBA in full swing on the site. Also have the odds finder tool up there. You can make sure that you are shopping those lines. Check out all the available bets and odds to you from those U.S. sports books this season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this slate for everyone and then talk Pacers and Sixers.
Yeah, it was a bigger number, I guess. Pacers opened +8 at home. Now it's +6.5. Might drop a little more. Totals also changed from 231 to 234 in this game. The Celtics have moved as well from +2 to +6 after they lost in double overtime late Sunday night. We don't know who will necessarily play on this back-to-back in Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell, though, is questionable for Cleveland, so going to have to wait a while to bet on that game. Blazers -6 at Pistons. The other game we break down, Hawks are +3 at Miami. Immediate rematch there. Raptors +7 at the Nuggets, and then the Pels +5.5 at Kings. De'Aaron Fox questionable for Sac. Look, the Pacers, I guess we see Halliburton's props are up, so he is playing tonight, and that is a game changer. I mean, covered in 5 straight when he has played, won 4 of those games, gone over in 4 of those games, and stop me if you've heard this on this podcast before. The only under was against Orlando. It's something we say quite often, Orlando finding a way to go under. Look, the Pacers offense is really impressive when they have Halliburton out there, and they have these young guys around him. Last 7 with him, a 125 offensive rating, 29 assists to just 10 turnovers, hitting 15 threes. You look at those last 4, just the numbers I mentioned, they're hitting 16 threes at 41%. And they've always been a good fast-breaking team. As we know, Philly is among the worst transition defenses in the league. Recently, in their last 7 road games, they've also been the 5th worst three-point defense, but they've also been the best offense. Number 1 offensive rating, their last 7 roadies here. 21st in defensive rating, not that impressive there. And scoring, as usual, the highest percentage of their points off free throws. In fact, 3% more than any other team in that span, that being the Lakers. And Indy is giving up the most made free throws per game, 5th most attempts on the season. So there's definitely something to indicate that this will look similar to how it did last season. End of season, these teams met twice in April. Both games totaled 253. That was when the Pacers were playing at a kind of an absurd pace and constantly going over, I guess. But, the 100 pace, Embiid goes for 45 and 41 on almost perfect field goal shooting in both those games. He missed their last game here in January, and it still went 129, 126 in OT at a 91 pace, which, that's the one thing you worry about with the Sixers, right? You're like, well, they have the number 1 offensive rating. Let's go, giddy up. But they are also the slowest pace team in those last 7 road games. Mm-hmm. I can kind of break those into 2 different scenarios, though. There's like the 3 division games against the Nets, Knicks, Celtics, and then you throw the Heat in there as just like another hard-nosed team. Those were played in an 88 pace. Their last 5 road games against anybody else, mostly Western Conference teams or Milwaukee, 98 pace, and they've given up 128 per game in that pace. So there's definitely a potential for a lot higher scoring game. I also don't think they're going to be particularly geared up to play hard on both ends here, it being the front end of a road back-to-back. They're going to Minnesota right after this before they head back for 2 at home. So it's a situation where you have a young team like the Pacers. Granted, they're on a back-to-back, but they just seem to have more focus. I kind of lean towards the over, honestly, more than taking the Pacers. But if forced to pick a spread, I'm not taking Philly to cover this. Pacers have gone over on 8 of 12 back-to-backs. They're 16-11 to the over after a W. But for them, it's just like a much different rest situation. They have this game. It's a big game for them, of course. Everybody loves to stick it to Mouthy, Embiid, and Harden. And they have this game after this game, 2 days off. Then they get Houston and Detroit twice. So it's almost like this is our Super Bowl type game, and confidence brimming after, like I said, 4 of the last 5, including a buzzer beater from Hallie yesterday to beat the Bulls.
Yeah, and it's all about what you do with Halliburton in the lineup versus what you do when he's not there. It's pretty stark. It's pretty obvious. They're 2-11 on the season now when Halliburton does not play. In those games, they score 111 points. Their 3-pointers drop from about 14 and a half, sometimes often 15 made threes for this team, to 11. There's no way they're going to win those games. They're basically a slightly better than 500 team with Tyrese Halliburton in the lineup this season versus not. So you have to start with giving them a little bit more credit than I think we continue to do. We've seen them lose large swaths of games in a row because Halliburton wasn't playing. That's the 2 times this season that they sort of fell out of contention. They were right in the thick of things, basically as like a 5 seed, roughly like a month and a half, 2 months ago. And then Halliburton went out for 11 games in a row. They lost 10 of those, and here we are. So I think with him in those 52 games, you got to believe in the 116 points a game. Even if they're not playing at the 104 pace that they have at times this season, they're still playing at about 102, and they're scoring by shooting a lot of threes in transition and getting a ton of assists when Halliburton is in there. They're completely a representation of how he plays the game. Shoot lots of threes, play really fast, dish the ball by being quicker than your defender and getting into the lane and getting other guys open. And I think they can continue to do that against a Philly team that playing better. I like what I see as far as being able to contend right now. But the key is are they going to be able to sort of sustain what they do everywhere, and in terms of on the road and at home. And that defense on the road is it's bad right now, especially in their last 5, hemorrhaging free throw attempts and 3-pointers to the tune of second most threes allowed since we've come back from the break for this team. Playing a few 3-point shooting teams in that time frame, fine, but still this is a 3-point shooting team in Indiana, and one that I think 8 points was way too much if Halliburton's playing. There might have been a little bit of discrepancy as whether or not he was, because yesterday he was questionable to play in that game that they won, like you said, on that buzzer beater. So, that said, like with Halliburton in there, also I should say that was a really good game for him because he was playing the Bulls and he was really ready to get back at Pat Bev, who popped off at the mouth for some reason because that's just what he does. But Halliburton still with that focus at this point, and then the way that they can sort of take advantage of what Philly can't do on defense as well. You get into those situations against the guards like Maxey and Harden, who, by the way, Maxey back in the starting lineup since we've come back from the break, where they were trying him out off the bench for a little bit. He's right back in there, and now also playing on that second unit as well, where you see a little bit less James Harden, actually, as he's been staying in the game with Embiid more. Another area for Indy to continue to score more points when those guys aren't on the floor as well, especially when Embiid's not on the floor, hemorrhaging points in the paint for the 76ers. So Miles Turner, also a pretty good opportunity in these games to pull Embiid away from the basket. Maybe you see some PJ Tucker on him if he plays because he's questionable. But and that's probably is the matchup, but still PJ Tucker getting a hand up on 7'1" Miles Turner is only going to do so much when he's standing at the 3-point line. So I like the opportunity for points here with the way that both these teams play and can sort of score off of the weaknesses in the other team's defense.
Yeah, you're right. PJ questionable. Tobias Harris also questionable. Solid defender as well for the Sixers. And with PJ out, the Sixers offense is going to be much better. I mean, he's not that important in this matchup defensively, but they score 119 a game in the few he's missed this year. So that's definitely a check in the right direction. This is the situation where the Sixers go over most often. 11-5 of the over as road favorites. Also over more with a rest advantage, which they have here since Indy's on a back-to-back. And Indy's defense, the last 8 games they played, I believe somebody has gotten 60 paint points, whether it's them or the other team, and they're giving up 54 in that span. So Embiid obviously gave him the work last season. Like I said, 45 and 41 on combined 32 for 47 field goal shooting. Miles Turner, I think, was out for both those games, so they do have a little bit more resistance, but he also gave him the work in Game 4 of this season in October, and he's on a tear right now. He's got Harden feeding him. They've got Maxey off the bench. It's just a really impressive Sixers offense that as long as, we're just almost betting on the pace. As long as this pace is above 95, which the Pacers play at close to 100 at home, I think this total is pretty good at 234. Maybe you do tease it down if it goes higher, though.
Yeah, I liked it more at 231. I really liked where it opened at 231, and I can get the Pacers at +8 there as well. I think they should be able to hang around, and that's going to require offense. So with that game theory, you have to expect points at least around 234. I do start to get a little bit worried about that number, but I think this is still a good opportunity with these two teams scoring a ton of points. As long as they both come along to get into the teens here, I think we feel pretty good about it. So that's all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along as we're bringing you another couple game videos up tonight as well. Until we see you next, happy betting.